There is a current article in the Fargo Forum that says North Dakota is the hot spot for the development of data centers right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
well, that's why I asked, we don't want to handcuff the county by doing this even involved.
and the other thing that I would point out is it is projected there will be 800 hours of blackouts in the United States because of a lack of electricity. So there's the other side of that coin, is it's going to have to come from someplace. So,
do you know the big beautiful bill that got signed in? Do you know some of the consequences of that?
I haven't read the bill, if you're asking.
They are proposing that they will take away the subsidies for wind and solar. That is in the thing. If you read it, it's there. Just want to project that.
That bill was signed yesterday, I think somebody told me. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was.
Signed.
4th of July.
4th of July.
Yeah, signed before the 4th. So there is some issues coming there, so as long as you understand that.
I visited with the agriculture department. They support this. They said it's going to take all forms of energy.
Right. Something everybody uses every day.
Absolutely.
Well, as long as we're discussing it, I really, everybody here knows that I'm in the half-mile setback scenario. And I know that zoning has exhausted this extensively. Is there any way, two issues. Number one, no other wind farm in North Dakota has ever existed with a mile setback. Okay? So if we're putting this out there, we're going to think we're going to reinvent the wheel here. Okay? Secondly, and I know there's a vast amount of people, or some people that have been very vocal about a mile setback. They haven't been really compromising, because right now our ordinance says 1,250 feet, and everyone will agree with the size of wind towers nowadays. That's not enough. The state has gone to 1,800. We proposed 2,600. Okay. If we would propose 3,500, to me that would be a compromise, and then there'd be a chance down the road. And try not to think about this particular situation, but in the future, do you think that would be a better chance of getting a wind farm in here at 3,500? That's double what the state recommends. Okay. I'd be in that camp. There's also people on the zoning board that are in that camp that we discussed, but didn't ever bring it up. I'm just throwing it out there. And for two reasons, okay? For the advancement of economic development, because we've heard a lot of people with this mile setback and the variance. None of those people have come up with a solution on how to maintain 92 miles of paved road in Wells County in the future. Just want to keep taxing land? How are we going to do that? No one has come up with that solution. All they've said is, we don't want this. Okay? We as a board got to look at both sides here, and 20 years down the road, how are you going to maintain those 92 miles? Grind them up? Well, maybe. That might be an option. But this might be a very small option. The other issue I have, and Janet can help me without this, there's language, and I don't think there's any teeth in it. There's language in the state legislature, and Dan helped me out here, that political subdivisions can't inhibit energy projects. That's kind of all it says, correct?
I think so, something along those lines.
We don't want to get into trouble with the state by making restrictions too great.
I think PSC could possibly override something if they felt that it was being infringed on. I don't know.
That's kind of what the word. That's what
felt like it read, but I'm not a lawyer, so I really don't know.
Yeah, I believe, and that really is deals more with elements of eminent domain, where the state is looking to, this is a private deal here.
Right, right.
Okay,
It-
eminent
nothing to do with
domain
it.
is not an
Correct.
element here. Nobody's gonna have their land taken away from them because
No.
this is not the government. And I think that whole thing stemmed from that transmission line between Jamestown and Edgeley. When people
Okay.
started to get in the way of that.
So, if the zoning commission came with a recommendation,
3 times.
and you guys want to override it all the time, and that's your choice. Why do we have a zoning commission? Why don't we just do what you guys want to do and get it over with? Because it seems like you're pounding it every time this comes up. So if that's the case, we don't need a zoning commission, because you don't want to listen to them anyway.
Well, Brian, I think as our job, buck stops here, like I said.
I understand
Our
that.
job is to look at the whole county.
I realize
We're
that.
looking at a small part of the county here.
Right.
You saw our bills for the month.
I understand all that.
And probably next year at this time, it'll be
Go ahead and
a 3% cap.
There is not a problem with one of them wind towers in Valhalla Township, as I understand,
No,
with a mile setback and a variance.
I have no problem.
And Stan was talking about this. The wind towers, these are twice as tall as any of the others in the state, as far as I understand. Is that correct?
They're not twice as
No,
tall.
no.
Well, they're a third more tall,
No, there are other ones that are installed about the same height,
600 or 700 feet,
about 600 feet.
and they're 500 feet wide.
I get the dimensions, but
I mean-
not 500 feet.
But how long are the blades? And you got 3 of them.
160 meter diameter, so about 450 feet.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess I personally feel better knowing that they're
with
supportive of this.
setback,
I'm
I mean,
looking at the future though. I like the 3/4 mile, first I heard of that.
but,
That's a compromise.
well, then you gotta.
If we all sat, no, we don't, we can do it right now. Let's go back to zoning. If you looked at a tower from sitting out this window and I said, is that a mile away or is it 3,500 feet, you couldn't tell me. And if you're against them, you're not gonna want either one,
Right,
right?
I understand.
And 2 miles isn't far enough.
No matter.
How come out west, they don't want, they just put 2 mile variance on oil field? You know that question? You know that answer? I don't, but I've heard that.
For what?
For wind towers.
You'd have to ask them.
So why aren't they 2 miles then?
There are people that want it.
Well, in here too, you know, and I'm somewhat critical, but I don't need to beat you guys up, but have, you know, let's be realistic as to Pierce County's got a wind farm. If you talk to their county commissioners, McHenry County's got one. If you talk to the county commissioners, Burley County's got one. None of us went to Towner County on Monday. They've got some. Generally, they all have less than a mile. They all have less than 3,500 feet. You know, don't pick out Stark County, which is the outlier here with 2 miles. First off, they got more money than oil money than what they know what to do with, so
There's a
they don't
tax
need
rate.
revenue.
There's oil wells everywhere.
Yeah, the oil wells are
I
no way.
understand all that, don't get me wrong. But,
No, these are good discussions.
I mean,
Good points.
if these guys are okay with the mile and they live with it, we can always change it eventually if we want to. There's always that angle.
May I?
You
That's
just said
true.
that.
Go ahead.
You guys keep talking that this is just Bremen and Valhalla counties, or townships. But everything that's gonna be written into this ordinance, this is gonna cover the whole county of Wells County.
That's right,
Exactly.
Not just those 2 townships.
Exactly.
that's right.
These turbines, they can survive at 1 mile. They can get enough of them up there at 1 mile with variance. You guys are supposed to be working for the people of Wells County here. You're supposed to be here to protect us.
Lydia, I think we are.
Okay, then go with the 1 mile with variance. That's what, you had a lot of people at these zoning meetings, even public there. And they wanted 1 mile with variance. The variance, that's those landowners, bring it closer to them if they want it.
We have to look at all the angles. Why are these all other ones less than that?
Well, they were shorter too, if you look at these. The towers in a lot of these other counties are much shorter. You
What
called,
difference
we
does
called
that
counties. We called counties though, and we tried to talk to auditors and people from the ordinance and zoning committees. They couldn't tell you one bit about what was in their zoning. They couldn't explain anything
And they're
about why.
operating, they're operating just fine.
Yeah, well, this is new turbines.
I know.
These are
I
taller
understand what
turbines.
you're saying. We move on here.
Well,
I think we need to discuss like the things they brought up more, and decide on those. Cause you guys are, you said you're fine with a mile setback, right? That wasn't brought up in your.
We aren't advocating for the mile, but I
Yeah.
think what we're saying is we understand the voice of the community and we don't want to fight anymore. And it hasn't been a fight, we've just asked for the rules.
well, you know, I'm in that camp too, that whatever the vast majority of the people want, that's what we should do, whether
Absolutely.
it's
So you want to put it on the ballot?
good economic development or not,
Very
you
true.
know?
I think what was critical though with the mile is the primary versus non-primary. If it's just a mile with the variance, that does not work. I want to clarify that. It's the primary, when the zoning commission came around to identifying two different types of properties, that is workable. But if you go with a lesser setback of say 3,500, you don't have to identify, you just say from any residence. So that's how other counties do it, is they say it doesn't matter if it's primary, secondary, and they're going with 3 times tip height. And so there is no requirement to identify primary versus non-primary, and that's why they don't get caught in that. And that's why we're asking for clarification, is we can accept the primary and non-primary, we just need to have some help with the county. We don't want to put a lot on you, but we need some sort of confirmation of what it is. And I think working with townships is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Certainly.
You know, and I think, and Jana and I, and Dan, we're really kind of tired of hearing the word variance. I think that has more restrictions and details than really anybody imagines, right? Boone, explain to me, what's a variance?
You can have it within less than that mile.
Who's they? Let's make this more
The
specific.
people that want the wind tower on their land, and if they want it closer to their place, the variance, they can move it closer to their place.
Rudels want a wind tower on their farm, okay, and it's a half mile away. So they gotta get a variance. They gotta make an agreement with you then, right?
No, they gotta make an agreement with that.
No, I'll know because I'm using Rudels because
Okay.
his land is right south of your place, right?
Yeah.
Is that Rudels? Okay,
Right. And they'd have to come and talk to me.
right. And you'd have to agree to it.
Or the good neighbor policy would kick in and I would get something for that
From Rudel?
from the wind tower.
But this is between you and Rudel.
No.
No. The wind towers,
Okay, and if you decide all this, who grants that variance?
Wind tower.
No, the zoning board has to. You know how many meetings we'd have if we have
It would
50
only-
variances?
It would only be one meeting for him, because he has a choice.
Right, but I'm throwing out scenarios here where that can become rather cumbersome. Follow me? If,
yeah.
that's why, help me out here. Why doesn't variances work?
Yeah, people aren't gonna sign it unless they get what they want, and how do we know what they want? And it's so many, it's just how do you get a collective group? So in certain areas, you might have several homes that have to all sign a variance, and if one person doesn't, the other people do, you still can't do it.
So you're saying good neighbor policy? Good neighbor policy, is that the way it used to be? Tell me, is it?
Yeah, there is no good neighbor policy.
Exactly.
Hello?
Exactly.
But I think there's been some of that up in the Cheyenne area, there's mile setbacks with the good neighbor policy already.
Well, there's certain particular.
Certain areas up there that you guys have already signed on.
And more power to it if there is.
And-
Right, but I mean,
I think we should put him up on the shore of the Cheyenne River in Harvey, everybody could, Harvey could watch it.
And you know what?
We gotta listen to the railroad.
You don't care about the noise, I'm just saying.
You know, after the last rather heated zoning board, someone told me that. He says, yeah, we're just gonna put them up a mile outside the city of Harvey and see how you guys like it. You know what my response was? It's their right to do that. What right do I have to tell Ralph Mache a mile and a half away that he can't put up a wind tower? That's his right.
So you just said everybody needs to have a voice, but you don't want to give them a voice. You want to limit their choices. Is what you're
No,
saying.
I'm just telling this guy, that
There's no good number that'll balance this out, I don't think. I mean,
that's right.
a half mile, there's no balance where everybody's gonna be happy, so.
That's all, man. We determined that 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All this is supposed to get over with. And we know we'll have to.
Vote on this, and if it don't pass, it don't pass. If it passes, it passes.
Do we want to do that, or do we want to let zoning get, you know?
Do we gotta consider these proposed changes from ERC wind? Do we look at them?
Well,
Vote on in August
I
then.
definitely think the primary residence has got to be in the motion for sure.
You know, Brian has a point in that we've kicked the can down the road long enough, and this particular proposal will work for these two townships. And we can always change this in the future,
That's a good point.
right?
Those
Mhm.
townships said we were gonna do a mile,
Right.
so.
We're beating ourselves up here for nothing because they're gonna go on their own.
Okay,
Anyway.
change it.
Sure, you guys have heard that
We
anyways.
can always change it
Townships
like
are
we
gonna
do.
do a
Each township can do what they want in law.
And that's what should be done here.
Isn't it, I mean, they're responsible for their own zoning, correct?
No, well, no.
One of them is,
One
because
of
they're
them
not
up there
signed
is,
on.
the rest are all part of the county.
Can they, the reason I'm asking this question is, are they gonna wanna take it back, and can they?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
That's been.
And that's gonna change some things to a
And that's
point.
what they should do, because they're involved in it.
They're
They should
supposed to,
have.
yeah, township is supposed to have the power. if you
They do
say.
have the power
Right.
to do that.
The way I look at this, you really have a couple of options here today. You can adopt what planning and zoning sent to you, which would not take into consideration any of the changes that they've recommended. And you can send it back to planning and zoning to deal with that. What do people want to know?
What it's gonna be.
What's going to be the setback? That's really all they want.
That's all the rest of this stuff
Okay,
is.
the rest of this stuff really has little to do with them. The feeder lines and all that stuff, that's the local landowner. That's their concern.
That's right.
Okay, our only thing on this is the fee. Okay, so all of these recommendations can go back to planning and zoning. All right, and that would be fine. Are you following what I'm saying? In other words, you could adopt what planning and zoning sent you if you agree to that. Or you can adopt any or all parts of this that's been sent to you. But we had a person that was supposed to be here 35 minutes ago, and we thought they would be ahead of time. We're going to sit here until the cows come home and belabor this point. So what do you want to do?
I think all the things presented, other than the definition of primary residence, zoning board, all those other changes that Janet presented, zoning board would approve them in 2 minutes. And we've talked a lot about, it's just language and clarification. It's not changing the intent of what the zoning board wanted. Right, Dan, right, Boone? I mean,
What's the zoning, what's the motion gonna, how's it gonna read? To approve this?
well, you can approve it as presented, what Janet had, would be the easiest.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
You can approve it as what the zoning board sent. If they want to change it, or they want to look at this and we have to change something, fine, but in all reality, the zoning board sent something to us, that's what we should vote on first. If things change, if they look at this and we have to add it to what we did, fine. But in all fairness, rather than start another fight, is
Any intent or plan to submit this for permitting between now and August 5th?
there's no intent, but every delay is,
I totally understand, yep.
These are money.
just respectfully, we want, clarity. We understand that this is extra. We weren't trying to put more on the county commission. We've been in with the planning and zoning commission the last 3 months. Our intent was to bring forward what we heard at that meeting, what we heard from citizens, and try to comply with that. Just provided some clarification, so.
I don't think there's anything here other than, I'm still unsure how the county would verify the element of residence. But that being said, I suppose you could approve it without clarification as to that element, and we can go back and figure that out, but
So should that be planning and zoning's?
I don't know that planning and zoning is gonna be able to figure that one out any better than
Well,
you
I
can.
realize that, but what I'm saying is that primary residence is an issue, and planning and zoning does these things, they should step up to the plate and come up with an idea what that means. Because they actually will have something to do with it, that's their job. I mean,
Well, what planning and zoning doesn't have, Brian, is a checkbook, okay? And, how,
I understand.
I think they all know what it means, it's the wordage.
And we talked about it, in that we didn't discuss it, we talked about where they vote, what their driving license is, if they should live there 6 months out of the year,
I think
we
it
went
could be
through all
put
that.
in motion and then the wordage could be.
I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the zoning ordinance as presented by Jana this morning.
And then explain what all it is.
Well,
And
with the modifications as presented.
Okay.
I mean, we have all the documents about us
Are we doing this one, or are we doing this one?
with the modifications,
With PRC
Along with the
modifications?
PRC modifications, correct. That's my motion.
Is there a second to that?
So does that mean a mile setback or not? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
that's it.
Making sure.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Boone second. Now we can discuss it further.
There you go.
We've been doing it for the last 45 minutes.
Do we need to adjust any of those proposed changes now?
Well, that's up to,
But that would be a good deal for zoning board.
Yeah,
We can always go back.
they can look at it at one of their
The
meetings.
only question I have,
I think it takes a separate motion to define what primary residence is.
well, if you.
And I'll make that
does
motion
this,
too.
then that would define.
How are we gonna take care of one?
No, let me change my suggestion. I think it would take a separate motion to find out and clarify as far as, in other words, I'd make a motion that it's up to the townships by September 1st to submit to the wind people as to what primary residences are. I'm just making that up, don't write that down. That'd almost be a separate motion.
Right, we got the original one up.
Well, I know, but that's to clarify.
That's a good point, though. Any discussion? Speak up, big guy. Come on.
No, we've been discussing it for a long time already today.
Today, last week, week
For the last
before.
3 months, we need to quit kicking the can down the road.
Any other discussion? Brian, got anything else to say? Brian?
No.
Okay, no other discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Alright.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Stan, did you vote?
Okay, so
Made a
now
motion.
I figured.
we will put this into motion, but, that primary residence portion, is it going to be put on the county, as in Dan and I, to figure out primary residences, or? Where's
I don't know if I should make a motion, but my suggestion would be for you or Dan, whoever wants to,
mostly you.
to contact contact the townships and they get a list of primary residents as defined in that by
That'd be the best resource to go to.
August 1st? I mean, you gotta have a timeline.
I think give a directive in this particular case. Don't try and do something that you can't necessarily control the outcome of. So just give her and I a directive, we'll figure this out.
Okay,
The other,
okay with that, John?
I'll figure it out. The other part of zoning that I had is there was a variance application that came in from Mike Albashir. He wants to put a house where his existing, well, we moved it off this last week, but where his existing house was, then he wants to put another house on there, and it sits within that 200 feet from the right of way of the county highway. It's actually like 180 feet from the county right of way. So he just wants a variance to be able to place a new house where the existing one was.
Didn't we approve that?
Planning and
That's
zoning
just
is
a
all good.
suggestion, though. We have to make a motion here to approve it.
It was
He's
approved by the
asking
zoning
us to do
commission,
that.
Right.
and the recommendation from the zoning board was to approve it.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved, second by Boone. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
All right, can you send Carla over here when you go out the door, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Also, do that. Did we have one on here? Oh, that's what he's done.
Oh,
Okay, so,
you know, Chairman, you're really behind.
you guys talk.
Not really.
Adam's not coming?
Dan's not coming, so it'll be.
Carla, get on here, we'll get right back on par, because Brent is next.
Paul and Wells are done.
Am I up?
No, Carla's up, and then you're up.
Okay, no problem.
Don't you go leaving.
Why is Jason just call me?
Huh?
Why don't they just call me?
I don't know what he's doing.
Well, it must be for that Amber deal.
I suppose it's.
Thank you.
No,
We're not at
no,
45.
KLJ was the same way. Go from Valley City Fire Department told us that their project was gonna start Oh, this is education part.
Yes. So Dan asked me to come in and kind of go over what goes on in my office.
All right.
A lot of people think that all I do in my office is criminal, which is not true. We do
Your
a lot
office
more
is
than
criminal?
We do a lot more than criminal, but I did just type up a few things that are our main items that we work with on a regular basis. We can keep these if it doesn't home, we can do it at home. But just to go over some of the things that we can go have going on in our office. Of course, our criminal side, which is working with the state's attorney and the law, sheriff's department, police department in Harvey, highway patrol, all of those offices. And filing the citations, setting things for trial, hearings, all of that information is on there. Some of the other things that we work with are civil case types. Contract collections, that's a big one. We have a lot of contract collections. So a lot of people that they have like a credit card and they don't pay it, then they come after them or get a judgment against them for the amount owing. So we have a lot of that. Of course, evictions are another kind of a big item there. Post-conviction relief, that comes from a criminal, but it's now considered a civil case. Restraining orders, protection orders, we do all of those. Small claims, name changes, There's many of them